Here we will learn how to add fractions with unlike denominators with a different strategy. In this strategy, what we're going to use is the least common multiple, which means the same thing as the least common denominator. Using the least common multiple, we're going to figure out what the least common denominator these two unlike fractions can share. So first, let's look at our problem. It is an addition problem. The fractions have differing or unlike denominators. So the strategy here is to come over on a workspace and find the least common multiple between the two numbers. Again, to find the least common multiple, I generally write it like this. And you're basically writing down the multiplication table for each number. I took the 4 because that is my first denominator, and the 6 because it's the other denominator. So for 4, we simply write down the multiplication table. 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12, 4 times 4 is 16. Now in my head as a student, I'm thinking, wait a minute, that 12 right there, I can turn a 6 into a 12 as well. Now if the students can't see that right away, I recommend taking the multiplication table up to about 4 times 5 or 4 times 6. But if you're able to see that, you can stop right here and watch what happens. 6 times 1 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12. Again, we're finding the least common multiple. So you have to think about, these are our multiples. They are the products of the multiplication table. What is the least number that these two numbers, 4 and 6, have in common? And the number is 12. That is the number that we're going to use to create a common denominator, least common denominator, for our fractions in the problem. So we go ahead and use 12 as our new denominator for both fractions. And then we simply use what we know about equivalent fractions again. 4 times what number gave us 12? 4 times 1, 2, 3. So 4 times 3. So whatever we do to the denominator, we do the same operation to the numerator. So we do 1 times 3. 1 times 3 is 3. Again, with our other fraction, we figure out 6 times what number gives us 12? It's 1, 2. 6 times 2. So whatever we do to the denominator, we do the same operation to the numerator. 1 times 2 is 2. Now we have two fractions with a common or like denominator, and we know what to do. What we do is we keep our common denominator, and we simply add the numerators. 3 plus 2 is 5. The final step is to check and make sure, can we reduce this fraction? We cannot reduce this fraction into lower terms because the only number that will divide evenly into both 5 and 12 is the common factor of 1. When that happens, we have our final answer. So again, to add fractions with unlike denominators using the least common multiple, what we do is we take our two denominators, we come over here and we write down their multiplication tables. What we do then is we analyze the two lists and we find the least number that they have in common. In this case, it was 12. We use that as our new denominator. And we come back to our problem, and using what we know about equivalent fractions, we rewrite each fraction now with a like denominator, and then we go back to our rules for adding or subtracting fractions with like denominators. We simply add the numerators and keep the original denominator here. And then the final step, again, is to check to see if the fraction can be reduced.